Anyway, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Neighbors having coffee. Next door neighbors sharing a driveway,
sharing a life.
Sharing a life.
Sharing a coffee.
And, friends for a long time, just having conversations that we do have anyway. But
yes, we do a lot of walking.
We do a lot of
walking and talking.
We do a lot of talking, and we
figured we'd just put this out there for you guys so that you understand what we're thinking. Not that it matters what we're thinking, but I think it matters.
I think it matters. And
it's
it's always interesting to gain perspective. I think we all have to. This is part of everyone's education. Hearing each other, having conversations like this. Talking about it, having a bigger, a more courageous conversation than just "How are you?"
Right.
How are you is such a broad question these days.
How are you needs to be answered honestly now. And I think the "How are you" has to be talked about.
Right.
So that's why we're doing this.
Right.
So, is your phone on silent?
Okay.
Put your phone on silent.
Let me do that.
April gets a lot of messages.
I do.
Okay, let's start. This is an introduction. This is April Perella. Okay. I'm Kirsten Kuhlman. This is Coffee Talk, and we are doing a neighborly talk
woman to
about
woman,
women and about black women,
about white women, and a question and answer session, and we'll switch it up as we see fit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because this is our show.
That's right.
We can do what we want.
Okay, so I'm going to ask questions.
All right.
Kirsten.
Yes.
With where we are today, with COVID, with the racial protests and unjust that have been more amplified now on the news, with your life experience in general, like where you are today, what would make you care more about Black lives? What single thing happening now in our society in general, and I do mean not just in our orbit, but in our bigger picture, what would make you care more about Black lives?
In our bigger picture means what? Like
in our world.
Okay.
In America.
Okay.
That's our bigger picture.
What would make me care more? So up until now, I think a lot of the injustices that have been happening have been, thankfully, not very close to home. Meaning, nobody I know has been brutally beaten or anything.
Killed by the
police.
Walked in and blown away because they were making their own coffee.
Right. So none of that has happened. I think
no one's civil rights have been denied.
So that's not true, because some civil rights... I mean, I know that Mark tells stories all the time about how he's pulled over for no reason, just driving while black, right? And I know that Carlos had that same problem, and I've heard from you that you also have experienced some of that stuff. So that's kind of a bad thing, but it's not death. So up until now, I think what would make me care more is if some of this stuff happened to people who I love and who are part of my inner circle. That would make me one step
closer,
1,000 steps closer to trying to figure out how to fix it.
What if it happened to and people outside of our orbit? Let's just say, your one of your former marketing team, or in Glen Ellen, one of the neighbors that you are just friendly with. What if it happened to them? Just friendly. Would that make you care more about Black lives?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course. I mean, yes, I feel, I'm not perfect. But I feel like I care about most people. most people who deserve my care.
Right. I get it.
I care about.
Right.
So yes, I think if any of this were to be closer to home, I think it would be, first of all, freaking horrendous and horrible. But yes, I would then have to figure out a way to be a little bit more active than what I've been of late.
That's awesome.
So,
by the way, these questions are not to demonize or amplify white privilege. This is a conversation. This is to make you think. This is something that allows us to, wow, maybe I haven't been thinking about this before. What would make me care more about Black lives than I already do? You were in a relationship with a Black man who since passed. You still have a relationship with his Black family. And he is in the fiber of this home.
Yep.
So just setting that straight. Okay. What in an anti-racist conversation takes you out of your comfort zone, and why? In an anti-racist conversation, what takes you out of your comfort zone, and why?
I think that when I'm talking to my white friends, my white acquaintances, and we start talking about racism, I think what takes me out of that comfort zone is when they start using the word they a lot. So they do this, they do that, they don't have this, they don't have that, they. And I think the word they is kind of like the word should for me. It's kind of like, don't tell me what I should do. And when you're talking about people, it's not they.
They makes them
less
than human.
So that pulls me into a different space of where I feel like I have to defend, and I feel like I have to step up and say things that do pull me out of my comfort zone. So the word they is, for me right now, is just kind of a little off-putting. So when you're talking to people about racism, talk about the racism and talk about how we can move forward as a unit and as humans together.
What about anti-racism? Like, if you are anti-racist, you are what? What does that mean? What does anti-racist mean to you? Like, speaking in anti-racist terms.
Like against racism?
Correct.
I feel like when you're talking against racism, I think you talk more about inclusion, and you talk more about help and love and moving forward, and more in a positive direction, and not so much in a blaming direction, or not so much in a, it's your fault, and this is the fault of X, and this is why it happens because it's always been this way, and that kind of thing. I think if you're speaking out against racism, you definitely have to come from a place of inclusion and love and unity and oneness. I mean, I don't know how else to describe that.
Okay. I don't want to feed it. I want you to tell me your where you are with it.
That's where I am with it.
How do you see racism actively affecting your community today? Where do you see racism rearing its head in your day-to-day as you walk through this town, this city? And I'll connect them, because we live in a city that has a secondary city to it, which I don't understand. I never understood why our two cities are literally, it's just a different zip code, but
it is, yeah.
It
is. Well, so that's kind of a very loaded question. So here, I don't feel like anybody will ever walk up to you on the street and say, you're black, you're not going to get this opportunity. Or you're black, you're not ever going to achieve this. You're black, therefore I'm going to throw the money that you made me tonight with your band at your feet. So I've seen that, and it's horrible and awful and disgusting, but it's never said. Like, nobody's ever going to say that to you. It's very subtle. It's very below, like, the radar, right? But it's definitely palpable. And that incident that happened really did happen with Mark and his band. And I've seen other things, and I've experienced other things, being a partner of a black man and being a partner in a company that is considered a black company. It's, like I said, nobody's ever going to come right out and say it's because you're black you're not getting this gig, but there's definitely an undertone there that is not acceptable, and it's unfortunate, and it's real, and I know that there are friends of mine who I've discussed this with who don't believe that. They also grew up here on the North Shore, but honestly, the reality is just different.
So do you see it, and I'm not shelling it if I understand it, do you see people of color not having the ability, or not able to have the same opportunities as they're like, I'll just put a competition in professionally, or do you see it as a quiet disrespect of people of color just in general, not ever being revered or looked at as someone to be respectful, so therefore if I have to pay you, I'll throw your money at you, or if I have a conversation with you, I really don't have to acknowledge your
so it's not a quiet disrespect. I think it's more a quiet disregard. And I think that's the difference. I think it's not a respect thing. I think it's more of a, well, I'm not even going to consider that as an option.
Right.
So
and then what do you see the result of that? Like, in the instance we're kind of dancing around, give me that scenario. What you give me that scenario.
Well, Barry Rawson, you need to sit down for this. So the scenario was, Mark was in a band.
Mark is black.
Mark is black. Mark has played in several bands through his life. He has always been a very big connector, a music connector, connecting the music people to each other, yada, yada. He had this big CD release party one night at a venue up here on the North Shore. A lot of people came to that. We packed the place. It was crowded. It was crowded. There were people everywhere. The money was flowing like there was no tomorrow. I think he had 3 bands show up there that night. His band was on last. And then they did their CD release, and at like 10 to 12, they stopped playing. And the owner of the establishment came over and started yelling at him. And was yelling at him like, what makes you think you can stop playing? I'm paying you until 12 o'clock. And I was standing there, I'm like, well, that's a really fucked up way to ask somebody to keep playing music. There's a lot of other ways you can ask that. And I decided to go over and let that person know that this was pretty fucked up. And how about you just say, please, would you mind doing another couple? It's not 12 yet.
Right.
Easy peasy.
Right.
But no.
Having a conversation rather than
I'm going to mess
ream you out.
Yeah. So Mark was like, we can keep playing, that's fine. And she's like, never mind, forget it. She took the money that she owed him for the night out and threw it at his feet. And I just stood there with my mouth wide open. And I'm like, do you want to pick that up and hand it to him like he's a human being? And she said, it's not your fight. And I said, you just made it my fight. And that's when Barry Rawson went apeshit and decided that he wanted to break up the situation with humor, and started saying, somebody get some baby oil. There's a cat fight going to happen right now. So kind of thankfully he stepped in. Otherwise, I think it would have been I would have ended up in jail. And that's
sometimes it's worth going to jail.
Well, sometimes it is, and that's really kind of where that was. And that was the first real like slap in the face moment that I had experienced with Mark in public, in a space full of his loved ones and people and friends and family. And that was ridiculous. So that was a real situation, and that was the result of that was that he never went back to that venue again. Nor did I. We never frequented that venue. And
did you think that Barry understood what was happening between all of you? Do you think that he had an idea? And this is not to put Barry on the spot, but just in general, looking back at it, do you think that everyone sort of understood?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I
what
think
that looked like?
No, I don't. I think that
Because she didn't. Barry was in the band.
Yes.
She didn't throw the money at Barry's feet.
No.
She didn't throw the money at Ruth's feet.
No.
She threw the money at Mark's feet.
At Mark's feet, yes. No. So that, I don't think so. I think that in conversation later, like many conversations over the years, this was years ago that this happened. Over the years, though, I think that a lot of people have come to understand that was intentional, under the radar racism that was happening there. So,
it's pretty direct.
It's pretty, and it was pretty intentional. So, and
we'll get into how that affects relationships, probably another podcast. But this is just the
beginnings.
The beginnings and a Q&A to sort of wet our beaks in the fervid pond of
of what's happening.
Of how to talk about this.
Yeah.
Okay. So my other question is, how do you personally benefit from white privilege today, right now, even with COVID? How do you personally benefit from white privilege?
Well, right now, I don't know if I'm benefiting from anything, but that's a different story. But, well, I mean, the obvious answers are that I grew up on the North Shore, because of that, I went to New Trier. I graduated from New Trier. I had that as a stepping stone to get into a college that I wanted to go to. Graduated from a college, went on to work in my chosen career. That I think was part of, what I get, because I was able to grow up here on the North Shore. Now, part of that, though, is also, to be fair, my parents working their brains out to get us to this space where they could grow us up in a community. Right, exactly. In a community that's not scary, and that's not, that we had stuff, that it was fine to have stuff, that, they worked really, really, really hard. Yeah, they worked really hard. They came from poverty. They came from a different country. They came from war. They came from all of that. And they wanted to make sure that we did not have to worry about any of that. So that's, to be fair, that is also their legacy that they left us. But, my skin color is white, so it was very easy for me to assimilate into this area and be okay. Because
we don't wear our history on our skin,
right?
In general, like our degrees aren't hanging off of us, and our stories aren't hanging off of us. We're judged very, very broadly on how we look and how we act. But that's, my question really is today, without knowing all that about you, without understanding your struggle or your parents' struggle, how do you benefit from white privilege? And that could just be, and I don't want to feed you, but it could just be because I'm not harassed.
Well, yeah, I mean, the obvious answer is I can drive anywhere. You know, I can drive anywhere in my car and go anywhere and not be pulled over for any reason, you know. Or if I do get pulled over, I sweet talk my way out of tickets because I've done that too. So that's the obvious and easy go-to, I think. But, you know, you're also asking me about my white privilege now at a time where I'm not privileged. So there's that I have to, right now in this time in my life, there is, I'm at a different space.
Tell me, that's a great segue. So in your opinion, what is white privilege? What does that mean? And you could equate that to where you live, or you could equate that to a general, how is white privilege perceived in America? What is white privilege to you?
Well, white privilege is simply that, is just, you know, you are white and you have different opportunities. You have other opportunities than black and brown people. You have other opportunities, even, unfortunately still, than as a woman, you know. As a man, you have way different opportunities. As a woman, you have other opportunities, being white. Having purple hair and 6 earrings, you may also not have the opportunities that other white men have. So there's all that. There's all that level of stuff. I think, though, a lot of that backs off into the opportunity for education. So that's kind of the bottom line for me, in my opinion, is that education in this country needs to be handled differently, and it needs to be way more fair than it is, way more social, for lack of a better word. It just needs to be a little bit even, you know. The playing fields all need to be even.
So meaning that you feel like white and black people don't have the same opportunity in education, or even being that what is taught, the educational,
well, yeah, barring what's
rubric.
Taught. I mean, yeah, the what's taught is like a whole different. I think the
access
to education has to be more uniform. So my education here in Highland Park needs to be the same as Englewood. Right. You know, that's kind of it. Right there in a nutshell. So that is where that, and don't ask me how I'm going to do that, because I'm not a politician. I'm just saying that that's what I feel. So I really feel like once you get an educational access or level or whatever, you can do things. You can keep going in whatever direction you want to go. But the fundamental education has to be even for everybody to get the even access
to play on the same
field. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my final question to you is: do you think, at this time in our lives, in the 2020, 2021, maybe like 2030 decade, do you think that black women specifically will ever be considered as a value, or are better revered or respected in society? And I ask this question really based on how black women have been treated, let's just say, since slavery.
Historically.
Yeah. But even now, black women are, well, as much as, and I'm not saying that black men aren't, but black women in particular are subject to more oppression than than really more of any, men, women, white, black, or what I should say, white, black men are in general. They're subject to just more pressure, more ridicule, less belief. Our Me Too, we're still fighting for it. Do you think in our lifetime we will see black women rise to a higher level of consideration? And why?
Wow.
Or if you don't,
That's a big question. Yeah,
it's a big question.
So women in general, I think, are still being pretty marginalized in a lot of areas. But black women, for sure, have different challenges, bigger hurdles, bigger obstacles. God, I would love to say yes. I would love to say, of course. I would love to just, why not? I mean, it just, these are the thoughts that go through my head. It's like, again, I think though, if you're the best person for the job, you're the best person for the job, right? Male, female, black, white, purple, doesn't matter.
Right.
If you can do that job and you do it the best you possibly can, then yeah, you're the guy, the gal, the they, the candidate, the person, the human that's going to do that job. So to be discriminated against because you're a black female, automatically kicking you out of that pool is of course eternally wrong. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think? What do you think is the future of that?
While I'm encouraged that we see more black mayors, first lady, black female mayors, first lady. Yep. We've seen a lot of firsts.
Yep.
I hope we see. I think that it is a possibility because black women are all about we just have to, and women are about have to, but black women in particular are all about have to. They have to raise their kids. They have to help their black men. They have to help their families. Even if they are educated, they take their income and their debt and still help their families, like many people do. It's really more. I try to look at it in the human sense. Will we ever be valued? I'm going to put it in context like this. There was a time when I'll equate this to Emmett Till. Emmett Till whistled at a white woman,
right,
and didn't do her any harm,
right,
but
didn't even whistle at her.
Didn't even whistle at her, but was accused of doing something.
Of it, yeah.
And the white woman has always been revered as this highly valued, shiny trophy, and that will not be respected, much like the American flag. And many black men have died, but there have been many black women who have been disrespected on a unbelievably higher level, like actually disrespected, and nothing has come of it. My hope is that there is a day, and I don't know when that day will be, where we're believed when we say something has happened, either racist, sexist, or whatever, and we're also looked at as the higher the higher mind of it, I don't know, looked at as the sometimes the answer, instead of the accusation.
Right.
We are the answer.
Well,
will that happen?
Yeah, I mean, the matriarch of every family should be revered, right? I mean, it's just kind of, and that reverence should be carried forward into a lot of other things, and unfortunately it just isn't.
No.
So I think that there's an opportunity for everybody to kind of change their mindset and understand that, like, women rock and black women rock and
black women rock.
There's that, so consider it. I mean, don't hold people back because they're female, and don't hold people back because they're female of color. that's not right. So
change
it.
I do think, I'll just say this one last thing, though. I do feel like the tides are changing in that respect when you see more black mayors, when you see more black women Congress women.
People. Yep. Mm-hmm.
When you look at CEOs in general where black people were never seen.
Right.
And I do think that spawns or is a result of education. And when I say education, I don't necessarily mean that these women are educated. What I mean is you understand how we've been kept down for that long. Mm-hmm. So looking at us as actual candidates of intelligence and ability,
aptitude,
and absolutely becomes more of a commodity and a value than just, there's another black woman, let's we have to have a black.
Yeah, a token, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. It becomes more of a value and not a token.
And I believe is rising.
Yep.
Not has risen.
Right.
Is a rising trend, and we will not be silenced, or we will not be denied. At least the opportunity to stand up at the podium.
Right. Good. Yes. I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So
that's our first.
This is going to continue. We're going to do these every once in a while. If you guys want us to discuss certain topics, please shoot us a note.
Absolutely.
We would be happy to discuss. And if you have opinions and you'd like to voice them, you may also send us a note, and we will read your opinions and discuss your opinions. We're
as long as we don't, we're doing our best to try to not politicize the platform for this.
Right.
Although we understanding that everything has politics embedded in it, woven in it.
Yeah.
We're trying to just talk as people and hear each other as people.
Yep.
Drawing politics out of it.
Yeah. So no political comments, please. We don't want to go political on any of this. Keep it human, keep it real.
But be honest. Be honest and be courageous,
And have some conversations.
Have some conversations. This is something if you've got black neighbors and you don't know your black neighbors, get to know your black neighbors.
Because they're pretty special.
Absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely.
For sure.
You are invited to the backyard.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Then we'll talk soon.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Ciao.
Good morning, everybody.